Princess Zarth of the Nebula Collective had always been fascinated by small, adorable creatures. Growing up in the crystalline spires of Ethros Prime, she'd collected holographic butterflies, tamed miniature star whales, and even kept a family of luminescent tree sprites in her private gardens. But on her 18th solar cycle, she wanted something truly special, something exotic and rare from the Outer Rim worlds. "Father, please," she pleaded, her iridescent skin shimmering with excitement as she approached the Cosmic Emperor's throne. Her 4 arms gestured gracefully, each hand adorned with rings that pulsed with different colored lights. "All I want for my Ascension Day is a pet from the Forbidden Sectors. Something no one in the palace has ever seen before." Emperor Vexhan regarded his daughter with 6 ancient eyes, his towering form draped in robes that seemed to contain entire galaxies. The Nebula Collective had conquered 73 star systems, but his greatest weakness had always been his daughter's happiness. "The Forbidden Sectors are dangerous, little starlight," he rumbled, his voice like distant thunder. "The species there are unpredictable. That's what makes them interesting." Zarth's eyes, all 6 of them, sparkled with mischief. "Captain Krexos just returned from the Sol System. He said there were these amazing creatures called humans that come in different colors and sizes. Some are small and fluffy, others make musical sounds." "Oh, Father, imagine having something so exotic." The Emperor sighed, a sound like solar winds through asteroid fields. He had successfully negotiated peace treaties with warrior species, commanded fleets across the void, and maintained order in the most chaotic regions of known space. But saying no to Zarth when she used that particular tone? Impossible. "Very well," he conceded, "but you will only observe the creature from a safe distance. Captain Krexos will ensure proper containment protocols." Captain Krexos, a grizzled veteran of the Imperial Navy with cybernetic implants covering half his face, bowed stiffly. "Your Majesty, I should mention that human specimens vary greatly in size and temperament. Perhaps we should specify. Just bring her something small and manageable." The Emperor waved a dismissive hand. How dangerous could a pet from a primitive world possibly be? 3 weeks later, Captain Krexos stood in the cargo bay of the Imperial transport ship Void's Edge, staring at the unconscious form sprawled across the containment platform. This was not what he had planned to bring back. The mission had started simply enough. Earth's third-world countries were in chaos, as usual, and acquiring specimens without detection should have been routine. He'd targeted a small village where locals spoke of tiny, colorful birds that sang beautiful songs. Perfect pet material for the princess. But everything had gone wrong. The extraction team had been setting up harmless capture nets when the attack came. A group of heavily armed militants had ambushed them, apparently mistaking the alien scouts for rival human factions. In the firefight that followed, Lieutenant Zektar had panicked and activated the emergency extraction beam on the wrong target. Instead of a small, singing bird, they'd accidentally abducted Marcus Chen, a 28-year-old former Marine who'd been in the wrong place at the absolute worst time. Marcus had been volunteering at a refugee camp, helping to distribute medical supplies, when the world had suddenly exploded in purple light and impossible sounds. He'd watched his fellow volunteers vanish as the landscape dissolved around him. Then came the sensation of being pulled apart and reassembled, followed by blessed unconsciousness. Now, as Krexos watched the humans slowly regain consciousness, he wondered if early retirement might be a viable option. Marcus opened his eyes to a ceiling that seemed to be made of liquid starlight. He blinked hard, certain he was hallucinating from whatever drug had been used to knock him out. But the ceiling remained impossibly beautiful, flowing and shifting like Aurora Borealis trapped in crystal. He sat up slowly, his head pounding, and took in his surroundings. The room was enormous, with walls that curved organically upward into that impossible ceiling. Everything seemed to be carved from some kind of luminescent stone that provided a soft, warm glow. It was beautiful, alien, and absolutely terrifying. "You're awake," said a voice that sounded like wind chimes mixed with whale song. Marcus spun around and came face to face with something that definitely wasn't human. The creature stood about 7 feet tall, with 4 arms and 6 eyes arranged in 2 rows across a face that was simultaneously reptilian and somehow elegant. Its skin shifted between colors like an oil slick, and it wore what appeared to be a military uniform covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. "Please do not be alarmed," the creature continued, and Marcus realized with a shock that he could understand it perfectly. "I am Captain Crexos of the Imperial Navy. You have been translated to serve as a companion for Her Royal Highness." Translated? Marcus's voice came out as a croak. "Where am I? What did you do to the others at the camp?" "You are aboard the flagship of the Nebula Collective, currently approaching Ethros Prime. Your people were unharmed, our extraction only affected you. As for translation, you have been fitted with a neural interface that allows communication and basic understanding of our society." Marcus felt the back of his neck and found a small, warm spot that tingled when he touched it. "You put something in my brain?" "A standard procedure for all acquired specimens," Crexos said, then immediately winced at his choice of words. "Specimens?" Marcus stood up, and despite the captain's imposing size, his posture shifted into something that made Crexos's warrior instincts suddenly perk up. There was something in the human's eyes, a coldness that spoke of violence professionally applied. "I meant companions," Crexos corrected quickly. "You are to be a pet. That is, a cherished companion, for Princess Zaratich." Marcus stared at him for a long moment. "You kidnapped me to be some alien's pet?" "It is a great honor," Crexos said, though his tone suggested he didn't quite believe it himself. "The princess is kind and generous. You will be well cared for." "I want to go home." "That is not possible. Earth is over 600 light-years away, and the Emperor's decree is final." Marcus was quiet for another moment, studying the alien captain with the analytical gaze of someone who'd spent years in hostile territory. Finally, he asked, "What exactly does she expect from a pet?" Crexos shifted uncomfortably. "To be charming, entertaining, and affectionate. To provide companionship and perhaps perform amusing tricks. Nothing harmful or demeaning," he added quickly, seeing the look in Marcus's eyes. "And if I refuse? That would be inadvisable. The Emperor does not tolerate disobedience, and his punishments are creative." Marcus nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "When do I meet her?" "Within the hour. We are approaching the palace now." Through the transparent walls of the transport, Marcus could see Ethros Prime growing larger, a world that looked like someone had taken the most beautiful parts of Earth and painted them in impossible colors. Floating cities drifted between mountain peaks that glowed with internal light, and oceans that reflected a sky filled with 3 moons and a binary star system. It was breathtaking. It was also the most alien thing he'd ever seen, and the reality of his situation began to truly sink in. Princess Zaratich waited in her private receiving chamber, practically vibrating with excitement. She'd had the room prepared with soft cushions, toys, and a selection of foods that the ship's xenobiologist had assured her were safe for human consumption. When the doors opened and Captain Crexos entered with her new pet, her first thought was that there had been some mistake. The human was tall, nearly as tall as she was, with broad shoulders and a lean, muscular build that spoke of strength and endurance. His skin was a warm bronze color, and his hair was dark and cut very short. But it was his eyes that gave her pause. They were dark brown, almost black, and they looked at her with an intelligence and intensity that was decidedly unpet-like. "This is Marcus," Crexos announced, his discomfort obvious. "He is larger than anticipated." "He's magnificent," Zaratich breathed, all 4 hands clasping together in delight. "Look at those eyes, and that posture, so proud and strong. Oh, he's nothing like the holographic projections." Marcus, meanwhile, was staring at what was quite possibly the most beautiful being he'd ever seen. The princess's skin shifted through shades of pearl and silver, and her 6 eyes were like captured stars. She wore a flowing gown that seemed to be cut from the fabric of space itself, and when she moved, she did so with a grace that was mesmerizing. She was also clearly treating him like a prize poodle. "Can he speak?" she asked Crexos, as if Marcus weren't standing right there. He can, Your Highness, though his language is quite primitive. Hello, Marcus said in a tone that was perfectly polite and completely devoid of warmth. Zardich gasped and clapped all four hands together. Oh, he does talk, and his voice is so deep and rough. It's like listening to distant thunder. She approached him with obvious delight, circling around him as if he were a sculpture. The coloring is so uniform, and look at this, he only has 2 arms and 2 eyes. How does he see properly with only 2? Your Highness, Marcus said, his patience already wearing thin. I can answer questions myself. So intelligent, she exclaimed. Can you do tricks? Can you fetch things? Oh, can you make music like the report said? Marcus looked at her for a long moment, then at Captain Krexois, who was trying very hard to blend into the background. I'm not actually a pet, he said carefully. Zaratach tilted her head, a gesture that somehow managed to be both alien and endearing. Of course you are. Father acquired you specially for me. Don't worry, I'll take very good care of you. I've prepared a lovely room with soft bedding and toys. I don't need toys, Marcus said. I need to go home. Home. She looked confused. But this is your home now. You belong to me. Something in Marcus's expression must have changed, because Captain Krexois suddenly stepped forward. Perhaps we should allow the princess and her new companion to become acquainted gradually, he suggested. But Zaratach was already moving closer to Marcus, reaching out with one of her hands to touch his arm. Your skin is so warm, she marveled. And you're so solid. Most of my pets are much more delicate. When her fingers made contact, Marcus jerked away instinctively. The princess's eyes widened in surprise, and for a moment, the room was completely silent. You don't like to be touched? She observed, and for the first time, she sounded less like an excited child and more like someone capable of actual thought. I don't like to be touched by strangers, Marcus corrected. But I'm not a stranger. I'm your owner. I don't have an owner. Zaratach studied him with a new intensity, her 6 eyes focusing on him in a way that made Marcus suddenly aware that despite her apparent naivety, she was still the daughter of an emperor who'd conquered most of the known galaxy. You're not like the others, she said slowly. The creatures from your world that we've encountered before were much more compliant. Those were probably actual animals, Marcus said. I'm not. But you're from the same species classification. The reports clearly stated. The reports were wrong. Captain Krexois cleared his throat. Your Highness, perhaps I should explain the complications that arose during the acquisition. As Krexois recounted the story of the botched extraction, Marcus watched the princess's expression change from confusion to understanding to something that might have been embarrassment. So you weren't intended to be captured, she said finally. No. And you have a life on your world that you were taken from. Yes. With other humans who will miss you. Marcus thought of the refugee camp, of the medical supplies that wouldn't be distributed, of the letter he'd been writing to his sister. Yes. Zaratach was quiet for a long moment, her skin shifting through deeper shades of blue and purple. When she spoke again, her voice was much softer. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't know. Father told me you were just a creature from a primitive world, not a person. It's not your fault, Marcus said, and was surprised to find he meant it. But I still need to go home. I can't let you go, she said, and now she sounded genuinely sad. Father would be furious if he found out there had been a mistake. He might even punish Captain Krexois. So what happens now? Zaratach looked at him thoughtfully. I suppose that depends on you. If you truly wish to return to your world, I could petition Father for your release. But it would take time, and there's no guarantee he would agree. And in the meantime? In the meantime, you would stay here, with me. She paused. But not as a pet, as, what would you call it? A guest. Marcus considered this. He was trapped on an alien world with no way home, at least for now. He could fight and make everyone miserable, including himself, or he could try to make the best of an impossible situation. What would being a guest involve? He asked. Companionship, she said. Conversation. Perhaps you could tell me about your world, and I could show you mine. No tricks, no fetching, no treating you like an animal. It wasn't freedom, but it was better than a cage. All right, he said. I can live with being a guest. Zaratich's face lit up with genuine happiness, and Marcus realized that despite everything, he found himself wanting to see that expression again. Over the following weeks, an unlikely friendship began to develop between the alien princess and the human warrior. Zaratich was fascinated by Earth and its customs, asking endless questions about everything from human music to the concept of democracy. Marcus, in turn, found himself drawn into the incredible complexity of the Nebula Collective. Your species governs itself? Zaratich asked one evening as they sat in her private garden, surrounded by plants that sang in harmonious chords when the wind touched them. Without a supreme leader? Some countries do, Marcus explained. It's messy and complicated, but the idea is that everyone gets a say in how they're governed. That sounds chaotic. It is sometimes, but it also means people have freedom to choose their own paths. Zaratich was quiet for a moment, her skin shifting through thoughtful shades of green. I've never chosen my own path, she said eventually. Everything has always been decided for me. Where I live, what I study, who I'll eventually marry. You're going to be married? Marcus asked, surprised by the sharp stab of something that felt suspiciously like jealousy. When I'm 25 cycles old, to Prince Thargon of the Void Kingdoms. It will unite our territories and ensure peace between our peoples. She sounded resigned. It's a good match, politically speaking. But what about what you want? What I want has never been particularly relevant, she said with a sad smile. I'm a princess. My life serves the greater good of the Empire. Marcus studied her profile in the light of the 3 moons. That doesn't seem fair. Fair is a luxury most people can't afford, she replied. Though I suppose you wouldn't understand that, coming from a world where people choose their own destinies. Some people do, Marcus said. Others have their choices made for them by poverty or war or circumstance. I joined the military because it was the only way I could afford college. After I got out, I worked in refugee camps because I'd seen what war does to people who don't have any other options. Zaratich turned to look at him with all 6 eyes. Is that what you were doing when you were taken? Helping people? Yeah. You chose to help people even though you didn't have to. Someone had to. She was quiet for a long moment. You're not what I expected a warrior to be like. What did you expect? Violence, aggression, brutality. She paused. Captain Krexos says humans are known for their capacity for warfare. We are, Marcus admitted. But being capable of violence doesn't mean you have to choose it. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is choose not to fight. Is that what you're doing now? Choosing not to fight. Marcus considered this. I'm choosing to make the best of a bad situation. Fighting wouldn't get me home any faster, and it would make things harder for everyone, including you. Including me? If I caused trouble, your father would blame you for not controlling your pet properly. Zaratich flinched. You're not my pet. I know that. You know that. But does everyone else? She was quiet again, and Marcus could see her processing this uncomfortable truth. I could speak to father, she said finally. Tell him the truth about what happened. Ask him to send you home. Would he listen? I don't know, she admitted. He loves me, but he also loves the stability of the Empire more. If he thought admitting to a mistake would make him look weak, then he'd probably refuse. Yes. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the singing plants and watching the moons move across the alien sky. Marcus, Zaratich said eventually, if you could go home tomorrow, would you? The question caught him off guard. A month ago, the answer would have been immediate and absolute. Now, looking at her in the moonlight, he found himself hesitating. Yes, he said finally, because it was the truth. I would. She nodded, and he could see the disappointment in her expression even though she tried to hide it. But, he continued, if I have to be trapped somewhere, I'm glad it's here. With you. The smile that spread across her face was radiant. As the months passed, what had started as mutual curiosity deepened into something neither of them had expected. Marcus found himself looking forward to their daily conversations, to the way Zartich's eyes lit up when she learned something new about Earth, to the graceful way she moved through her gardens. Zartich, meanwhile, discovered that having a companion who challenged her ideas and treated her as an equal was intoxicating. Marcus didn't defer to her royal status or agree with everything she said just to please her. He argued with her about politics and philosophy, made her laugh with stories about human customs, and showed her a perspective on life she'd never considered. The change in their relationship didn't go unnoticed. "The princess seems different lately," Captain Krexoes observed to his second-in-command as they watched Marcus and Zartich walking through the palace courtyard below. "Different how?" Lieutenant Vexera asked. "Happier. More confident. She's been asking questions about the outer colonies, about governance structures in other systems. Yesterday she requested access to the Imperial Archives on interspecies relations. That's good, isn't it? Shows she's taking an interest in her future responsibilities." Krexoes frowned. "Or it shows she's being influenced by the human. Have you seen the way she looks at him?" Lieutenant Vexera followed his gaze to where Zartich was laughing at something Marcus had said, her skin shimmering with warm golden hues. "Oh," she said quietly, "that could be problematic. Very problematic. She's supposed to marry Prince Thargon in 18 months. Does the Emperor know? Not yet, but he will eventually. And when he does, they both knew what would happen. The Emperor's love for his daughter was legendary, but his commitment to the stability of the Empire was absolute. If he saw Marcus as a threat to Zartich's arranged marriage, the human wouldn't survive the day. Neither Marcus nor Zartich were blind to the growing tension in the palace, but they chose to ignore it in favor of the happiness they'd found in each other's company. It was a dangerous game, and they both knew it, but the alternative, acknowledging that their feelings were impossible, was too painful to contemplate. The crisis came, as crises often do, when they least expected it. Marcus had been at the palace for nearly 8 months when Prince Thargon arrived for an official visit. He came with a fleet of ships and an entourage of advisors, ostensibly to discuss trade agreements but really to evaluate his future bride. Prince Thargon was everything a royal alliance required: powerful, wealthy, and politically connected. He was also cold, arrogant, and treated Zartich with the casual dismissiveness of someone who viewed her as a useful object rather than a person. "The princess seems to have developed some unusual interests," he observed during a formal dinner, his tone making it clear this was not a compliment. "I'm told she spends her time with creatures from primitive worlds." "Princess Zartich has always been curious about other cultures," Emperor Vexhan replied diplomatically. "Curiosity is admirable in moderation," Thargon said, "but a future queen must focus on more appropriate pursuits. I trust these distractions will be eliminated before our marriage." Marcus, who had been standing at attention along the wall with the other palace servants, felt his hands clench into fists. The casual way Thargon dismissed Zartich's interests, dismissed her, made him want to do violence. Zartich, for her part, sat rigidly in her chair, her skin cycling through darker shades that Marcus had learned indicated anger and distress. "Of course," the Emperor said smoothly. "Zartich understands her responsibilities." After dinner, Marcus found Zartich in her private study, staring out at the night sky with tears streaming down her face. "Hey," he said softly, entering without knocking for the first time since he'd been there. She turned to him, and the pain in her expression hit him like a physical blow. "He's horrible," she whispered. "Arrogant and cruel and utterly dismissive of anything that doesn't directly benefit him. I know, and I'm going to have to marry him, share my life with him, bear his children." She laughed bitterly. "Father says it's for the good of the Empire." Marcus crossed the room and, for the first time, pulled her into his arms. She melted against him, her 4 arms wrapping around his torso as she sobbed against his chest. "I wish I could take you away from here," he murmured into her hair. "I wish I could give you the choice to live your own life." She pulled back to look at him, her eyes bright with tears and something else, something that made his heart race. "Marcus," she whispered. "I know," he said. "I know we can't. I know it's impossible. But if we could, there's nowhere in the galaxy I'd rather be than with you." They kissed then, an act of rebellion and desperation and love that they both knew could destroy them. When they broke apart, Zartage's skin was glowing with soft, warm light, a phenomenon Marcus had never seen before. "What's happening?" he asked. "It's a bonding response," she said, wonder in her voice. "It only happens when we find our true mate. I thought it was just a legend." "Zartage, I know," she said quickly. "I know it doesn't change anything. But for just this moment, let me be happy." They held each other in the moonlight, both knowing that tomorrow would bring consequences they couldn't avoid, but treasuring the perfect impossible moment they'd found. The next morning, Emperor Vexhan summoned Marcus to the throne room. Marcus entered to find the Emperor waiting with Prince Thargon, Captain Krexos, and a full contingent of palace guards. This was not going to be a friendly conversation. "Approach," the Emperor commanded. Marcus walked forward with steady steps, his military training keeping his posture confident despite the circumstances. "Prince Thargon has brought some disturbing reports to my attention," the Emperor said. "He claims that you have been inappropriately familiar with my daughter." "Define inappropriate," Marcus replied, his tone carefully neutral. "Do not play word games with me, human. Have you or have you not overstepped the boundaries of your position?" Marcus met the Emperor's six-eyed gaze steadily. "I've treated Princess Zartage with the respect and consideration due to any intelligent being. That is not what I asked." "Then perhaps you should be more specific in your questions." The Emperor's expression darkened, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "Very well. Are you in love with my daughter?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Marcus could lie, could try to deflect or minimize, could attempt to protect them both with deception. Instead, he chose the truth. "Yes," he said simply. The word echoed in the sudden silence. Prince Thargon smiled coldly. Captain Krexos closed his eyes in despair, and the Emperor's face went through a spectrum of emotions before settling on cold fury. "And does she return these feelings?" Marcus could hear his heart pounding. "That's a question you should ask her." "I'm asking you." "Yes," Marcus said again. "She does." The Emperor rose from his throne, his massive form radiating menace. "You dare to corrupt my daughter with your primitive emotions? To interfere with arrangements that ensure the stability of the Empire? I dare to treat her like a person instead of a political tool," Marcus replied, his own anger finally breaking through his careful control. "You forget yourself, human. You are nothing but a specimen, a curiosity brought here for my daughter's amusement. You have no rights, no standing, no voice in how this empire is governed." "Maybe not," Marcus said, "but I have a voice in how I live my life, and I choose to love her." The Emperor's roar of rage shook the walls of the throne room. "Guards, take this creature to the detention level. Tomorrow, he will be executed for his insolence." As the guards moved forward, Marcus didn't resist. He'd known this moment would come eventually. He'd hoped for more time, but at least he'd had the chance to tell Zartage how he felt. "Wait!" A voice called from the entrance to the throne room. Everyone turned to see Princess Zartage striding in, her skin blazing with defiant silver light. She'd clearly been listening from the corridor. "Father, I need to speak with you. Privately." "Zartage, return to your chambers. This doesn't concern you." "It concerns me more than anyone else in this room," she said, her voice carrying an authority Marcus had never heard from her before. "I am the one whose life is being bartered away. Your life serves the Empire. Does it? Or does it serve your fear of appearing weak?" The Emperor stepped back as if she'd struck him. "How dare you? How dare I speak the truth? How dare I point out that you're so terrified of losing control that you'd rather destroy my happiness than admit that your perfect plans might be flawed?" Prince Thargon stepped forward. "This is exactly the kind of behavior I was warning you about, Your Majesty. The human has clearly corrupted her thinking." "Corrupted?" Zaratich turned to face him, and Marcus felt a surge of pride at the regal authority in her bearing. He's taught me that I deserve better than a marriage to someone who sees me as a prize to be won rather than a person to be cherished. You are being childish, Thargon said dismissively. These romantic notions will pass once you accept your responsibilities. My responsibilities, Zaratich repeated. Tell me, Prince Thargon, what are your responsibilities to me? To provide for you, to protect the alliance between our worlds. But not to love me, not to respect my thoughts or opinions, not to treat me as an equal partner in anything. Love is a luxury, Thargon said. Respect is earned. And equality is an illusion that weak minds use to justify their failures. The silence that followed was deafening. Father, Zaratich said quietly, turning back to the Emperor. This is the man you want me to spend my life with. This is your idea of a suitable match. Emperor Vexhan looked between his daughter and Prince Thargon, and for the first time since Marcus had met him, he seemed uncertain. The alliance, he began, can be maintained through trade agreements and mutual defense pacts, Zaratich interrupted. It doesn't require me to sacrifice my life to a man who despises everything I am. And what of him? The Emperor gestured toward Marcus. Would you throw away your crown for a primitive warrior from a backwater world? I would throw away my crown for a man who sees me as a person worth loving, she replied without hesitation. But I won't have to, because I've found a better solution. She turned to address the entire room, her posture straight and commanding. I propose a new arrangement. Prince Thargon, you want access to our trade routes and military protection. I can give you that through a formal alliance that doesn't require marriage. In exchange, you acknowledge that our worlds are equals, not master and vassal. Impossible, Thargon scoffed. Without the marriage bond, there's no guarantee of continued cooperation. Then you clearly don't understand how true alliances work, Zaratich said calmly. They're based on mutual benefit and respect, not on the ownership of women. She turned back to her father. As for Marcus, I propose granting him citizenship in the Nebula Collective. He has military experience, strategic thinking skills, and a perspective on governance that could be valuable to the Empire. Instead of wasting his potential in a cell, why not use it to strengthen our worlds? The Emperor stared at his daughter for a long moment. And if I refuse? Then you'll execute an innocent man for the crime of loving someone who loves him back. And you'll condemn your daughter to a lifetime of misery for the sake of a political arrangement that serves no one's interests but your own pride. The silence stretched on. Finally, Prince Thargon spoke. This is ridiculous. I came here expecting to finalize a marriage contract, not to listen to the romantic fantasies of a spoiled princess. Then perhaps, said a new voice from the entrance, you should reconsider your approach to diplomacy. Everyone turned to see Ambassador Corveth, one of the most respected negotiators in the Galactic Council, entering the throne room. Your Majesty, he said with a bow to the Emperor. I apologize for the interruption, but I've been monitoring the situation and felt I should offer some perspective. Speak, the Emperor commanded. The princess's proposal is not without merit. The Void Kingdoms have been seeking expanded trade relationships with the Outer Rim worlds, and a formal alliance with the Nebula Collective would provide that access. As for the human, he glanced at Marcus. His profile suggests considerable potential. Former military, experience in humanitarian aid, demonstrated loyalty and strategic thinking. He could indeed be valuable as a citizen rather than a prisoner. Prince Thargon's face darkened. This is a conspiracy. This is pragmatism, the ambassador interrupted. The galaxy is changing, Your Highness. The old ways of securing alliances through marriage bonds are becoming obsolete. Modern partnerships are based on shared interests and mutual respect. Emperor Vexhan looked around the room, his expression thoughtful. When his gaze fell on his daughter, Marcus could see the internal struggle between the autocrat and the father. Zaratich, he said finally, are you certain this is what you want? Once you refuse this marriage, there may not be another opportunity to form such a powerful alliance. I'm certain, Father. I'd rather build 100 smaller alliances based on mutual respect than one large one built on my unhappiness. The Emperor nodded slowly. And you, Marcus Chun of Earth, if I grant you citizenship, how do I know you won't use your position to undermine the stability of the Empire? Marcus stepped forward. Because I've seen what happens when governments prioritize power over the welfare of their people. I won't help you oppress anyone, but I will help you build something better. Even if it means never seeing your homeworld again? Marcus glanced at Zaratich, who was watching him with hope and terror in equal measure. My home is wherever she is, he said simply. The Emperor was quiet for another long moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, he began to laugh. 60 years I've ruled this empire, he said, shaking his head. 60 years of careful political maneuvering, strategic marriages, and calculated alliances. And my daughter solves a diplomatic crisis with honesty and a love story. He looked at Prince Thargon. Your Highness, I regret that our children will not be united in marriage. However, I believe the princess's alternative proposal has merit. Shall we discuss the terms of a formal alliance? Thargon's expression suggested he'd rather discuss the terms of war, but political necessity forced him to nod stiffly. Excellent, the Emperor said. He turned to Marcus. As for you, Marcus Chen, I hereby grant you full citizenship in the Nebula Collective, along with the rank of Strategic Advisor to the Imperial Council. Your first assignment will be to help negotiate the terms of our new alliance with the Void Kingdoms. Marcus bowed formally. I'm honored, Your Majesty. Don't thank me yet, the Emperor said with a slight smile. Wait until you see what passes for diplomatic negotiations around here. Ambassador Corveth will brief you on the details. As the formal proceedings continued, Marcus caught Zaratich's eye across the room. She was glowing again, that soft, warm light that indicated perfect happiness, and her smile could have powered a small star. Later that evening, they found themselves back in her private garden, but everything had changed. They weren't stolen moments anymore, forbidden touches in the shadows. They were simply two people who loved each other, free to build a future together. I still can't believe it worked, Zaratich said, curled against Marcus's side on a bench overlooking the singing flowers. For a moment there, I thought Father was going to have you executed just to make a point. So did I, Marcus admitted. But you were magnificent in there. I've never seen anyone stand up to an emperor like that. I learned from the best, she said, looking up at him. You taught me that I had the right to choose my own path. You already had that right. I just helped you realize it. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the three moons rise over the alien landscape that was slowly becoming home. Marcus, Zaratich said eventually, do you ever regret it? Being taken from your world? He considered the question seriously. I regret the way it happened. I regret not being able to say goodbye to my family, not being able to finish the work I was doing at the refugee camp. But regret ending up here? Regret meeting you? He shook his head. Never. Even though it means you can never go back? Zaratich, look around you. We're sitting in a garden on an alien world, surrounded by plants that make music when the wind touches them. Above us are 3 moons and a binary star system that creates light shows every night. Next week, I'm going to help negotiate a peace treaty between species that live in different star systems. And I get to do all of this with the most amazing woman in the galaxy. He turned to face her fully. Why would I want to go back to anything else? Her response was to kiss him, and this time when her skin began to glow, he understood what it meant. Not just love, but the recognition of a bond that transcended species, worlds, and the vast distances between stars. There's something I need to tell you, she said when they broke apart. The bonding light, it's not just emotional. It creates an actual psychic connection between mates. We'll be able to sense each other's emotions, share thoughts when we want to. It's permanent and it's essentially marriage by our customs. Marcus smiled. Are you asking me to marry you, princess? I'm telling you that I already have, according to the laws of my people. The question is whether you mind being married to an alien princess with 4 arms and 6 eyes who glows when she's happy. Marcus said thoughtfully. For arms means better hugs. 6 eyes means you can keep better track of me when I'm being stupid. And the glowing thing is actually pretty useful as a nightlight. She laughed, the sound like silver bells in the alien air. Is that a yes? That's a yes to whatever you want it to be. Marriage, bonding, partnership, call it whatever makes you happy. I'm yours, Zaratich, completely and forever. The light emanating from her skin intensified, and Marcus felt something shift in his mind. A warmth, a presence that was entirely her. Through this new connection, he could feel her joy, her love, her absolute certainty that they belonged together. I love you, she whispered. I love you too, he replied, and meant it with every fiber of his being. As they held each other under the alien stars, Marcus reflected on the strange journey that had brought him here. He'd been kidnapped by aliens who'd mistaken him for a pet, had spent months as the pampered companion of a princess, and had somehow ended up as a citizen advisor helping to reshape interstellar diplomacy. It wasn't the life he'd planned. It wasn't even a life he could have imagined. But it was his life now, and he couldn't think of anywhere else he'd rather be. The next morning brought new challenges and opportunities. Marcus's first briefing as strategic advisor was an eye-opening introduction to the complexity of galactic politics. The Nebula Collective maintained relationships with over 300 different species across 73 star systems, each with their own customs, needs, and potential conflicts. The key, Ambassador Corveth explained as they reviewed holographic displays of various worlds and their political structures, is understanding that what works for one species may be completely incompatible with another. The crystalline hegemony, for example, makes decisions through a process that involves literally singing their thoughts into harmonic consensus. Meanwhile, the Iron Dominion settles disputes through ritual combat. And somehow you make this all work together? Marcus asked, fascinated despite the overwhelming complexity. We try. The Emperor's approach has always been to maintain stability through strength and clear hierarchies. It's effective, but it can also be inflexible. Marcus studied the displays, his military training helping him identify patterns and potential pressure points. What about economic integration? If different worlds become more dependent on each other for trade and resources, they have stronger incentives to cooperate. An interesting thought. The Void Kingdoms have actually been pushing for exactly that kind of integration, but previous negotiations have stalled over concerns about sovereignty. Maybe that's because the negotiations focused on political control rather than mutual benefit, Marcus suggested. What if we approached it differently? Over the following weeks, Marcus threw himself into his new role with the same dedication he'd once applied to military operations and humanitarian work. He studied the histories and cultures of dozens of worlds, learned the intricacies of interstellar law, and began developing new approaches to some of the collective's most persistent diplomatic challenges. His outsider perspective proved invaluable. Where seasoned diplomats saw insurmountable cultural differences, Marcus saw opportunities for creative solutions. His experience working with diverse human populations in crisis situations translated surprisingly well to alien negotiations. The quarantine world situation, he said during one council meeting, isn't really about territorial disputes. It's about fear and resource scarcity. If we can address the underlying concerns about food security and medical supplies, the territorial issues become much more manageable. Emperor Vexhan, who had initially been skeptical about his daughter's choice in partners, found himself increasingly impressed by Marcus's insights. Your analysis of the mechanoid uprising was particularly astute, he admitted after one session. I hadn't considered the psychological factors driving their rebellion. On Earth, we learned that most conflicts have layers, Marcus explained. The surface issue is rarely the real problem. You have to dig deeper to find what people actually need. And what do you think our people need? The Emperor asked. Marcus was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. Honestly, I think they need to feel like they have a voice in their own governance. The collective is vast and powerful, but it's also distant from the daily lives of most citizens. People want to feel like their concerns matter, that their leaders actually listen to them. That sounds dangerously close to the democratic chaos you described on your homeworld. Not chaos, Marcus corrected. Participation. There's a difference between letting everyone make every decision and making sure everyone has input into the decisions that affect their lives. It was a radical concept for an empire built on hierarchical authority, but the emperor found himself intrigued despite his reservations. Meanwhile, Marcus's relationship with Zarth continued to deepen and evolve. The psychic bond between them allowed for a level of intimacy and understanding that neither had experienced before. They could share thoughts, emotions, even memories when they chose to open that connection fully. It's like having a constant companion in my mind, Zarth explained to her closest friend, Lady Kiraven, during one of their regular walks through the palace grounds. But not intrusive, more like knowing that someone who understands you completely is always there if you need them. And the physical differences don't matter? Zarth's skin shimmered with amused gold tones. Kira, he finds my extra arms convenient for better hugs, and I find his mammalian body temperature wonderfully warm on cold nights. We complement each other perfectly. But what about children? Can your species even? The medical team is still researching that, Zarth admitted. Cross-species bonding is rare, but not unheard of. And there are other ways to build a family if biological children aren't possible. As if summoned by their conversation, Marcus appeared around a corner, deep in discussion with Captain Krexos about security arrangements for an upcoming diplomatic summit. The Void delegation will include Prince Thargon, Krexos was saying, so we'll need to ensure appropriate protocols are followed. Has he accepted the new alliance terms? Marcus asked. Grudgingly. He's not pleased about the changes, but the economic benefits are too significant to ignore. Marcus nodded, then caught sight of Zarth and smiled. The warm, genuine expression that never failed to make her skin glow with happiness. Ladies, he said with a bow that managed to be both respectful and slightly playful. Discussing anything interesting? Just wondering how you're adjusting to palace life, Lady Kiraven replied diplomatically. It's certainly different from refugee camps and military bases, Marcus admitted. But the core principles are the same. Identify problems, develop solutions, help people work together toward common goals. Speaking of which, Zarth interjected. Father wants to see us both in the council chamber. Something about a new proposal you've been working on. Marcus and Krexos exchanged glances. The federal district plan? What federal district plan? Zarth asked as they walked toward the palace. Something I've been researching, Marcus said. A way to give member worlds more autonomy while maintaining the benefits of collective governance. But it's still just a concept. Apparently it's a concept that's gotten the Emperor's attention, Krexos observed. They found Emperor Vexhan in the council chamber with several senior advisors, all studying holographic displays of governmental structures and economic data. Ah, Marcus, the Emperor said as they entered. I've been reviewing your proposal for restructuring the collective's governance. It's ambitious. It's just an idea, Your Majesty. A way to address some of the autonomy concerns we've been hearing from the Outer Rim worlds. Explain it to the princess, the Emperor commanded. Marcus activated the holographic display, showing a three-dimensional model of the proposed structure. The basic concept is federalism, a system where local governments handle day-to-day administration while the central government focuses on issues that affect multiple worlds. Defense, trade regulation, major infrastructure projects. But how do you prevent the system from fragmenting? One of the advisors asked. If worlds have too much autonomy, what stops them from simply leaving the collective? Mutual benefit, Marcus replied. If the central government provides services that individual worlds can't provide for themselves, like protection from hostile species, access to interstellar trade networks, shared scientific research, then staying in the collective becomes advantageous rather than just mandatory. Zarth studied the displays with growing excitement. It's brilliant, she said. Worlds get the freedom to govern themselves according to their own cultures and needs, but they also get the security and resources of being part of something larger. The transition would be complex, another advisor warned. Some worlds might not be ready for increased self-governance. Then we implement it gradually, Marcus suggested. Start with worlds that have demonstrated stable governance. Use them as examples for others. The key is making it voluntary, showing that participation in the federal system brings benefits, not imposing it by force. Emperor Vexhan was quiet for a long moment, studying the projections and data models. Finally, he spoke. This represents a fundamental shift in how the collective operates, he said. It would require constitutional changes, new legal frameworks, completely restructured administrative systems. Yes, Your Majesty, Marcus agreed. It would also mean giving up significant central authority in favor of a more collaborative approach. Yes. And you believe this would strengthen the collective rather than weaken it? Marcus met the Emperor's six-eyed gaze steadily. I believe it would make the collective more resilient, more adaptive, and more representative of its citizens' actual needs. Strong enough to last for generations rather than just as long as any single ruler can maintain control through force. The silence that followed was profound. Finally, the Emperor smiled, a rare expression that transformed his entire face. Very well, he said. We'll begin preliminary discussions with selected world leaders. But Marcus. Yes, Your Majesty? This was your idea. You'll be leading the implementation team. As the meeting broke up and advisors began discussing practical details, Zaratich squeezed Marcus's hand. Are you ready to help reshape galactic governance? She asked. Marcus looked around at the bustling council chamber, at the holographic displays showing dozens of worlds and billions of beings whose lives would be affected by the decisions made in this room. A year ago, he'd been a human aid worker trying to help a few hundred refugees. Now he was helping to design governmental systems for an interstellar empire. I have no idea what I'm doing, he admitted. Perfect, Zaratich said with a grin. Neither did anyone else when they started. That's what makes it an adventure. That evening, as they sat in their favorite spot in the garden, Marcus reflected on the impossible journey that had brought them to this moment. You know, he said, Captain Krexos was technically right when he first brought me here. About what? I am your pet, Marcus said with a smile. Just not in the way anyone expected. Zaratich looked at him with confusion. How do you figure that? Well, you wanted something exotic and entertaining. Something that would make you happy and give you companionship. He gestured to himself. Mission accomplished. That's ridiculous, she protested. But she was laughing. You're not my pet. You're my partner, my equal, your mate, Marcus finished. I know, but I'm also completely devoted to making you happy. I follow you around everywhere, and I get excited when you come home. Those are just signs that you love me. Same thing, really. The only difference is that instead of fetching sticks, I fetch interstellar peace treaties. Zaratich's laughter filled the garden, bright and joyous. You're impossible. I'm yours, Marcus corrected, pulling her closer. Completely impossibly, forever yours. As the alien stars wheeled overhead and the singing plants filled the air with their gentle melodies, Marcus marveled at the strange turns life could take. He'd come to this world as a kidnapped specimen, had nearly been executed as a threat to imperial stability, and had somehow ended up as both a government advisor and the husband of an alien princess. It wasn't the life he'd planned, but it was better than anything he could have imagined. And sometimes, he thought as Zaratich's skin glowed with contentment in his arms, the best adventures were the ones you never saw coming. Princess Zaratich had wanted a pet, and she'd gotten a human warrior instead. But in the end, what she'd really found was something far more precious. A partner who saw her not as a prize to be won or a tool to be used, but as a person worthy of love, respect, and the freedom to choose her own destiny. And Marcus had found something equally valuable. A home where he could use his skills and experience to help build something better, and a love that transcended the vast distances between worlds. In the great cosmic joke of the universe, everyone had gotten exactly what they needed, even if it wasn't what they'd originally wanted. The alien princess had her companion, the human warrior had his purpose, and somewhere in the space between species and star systems, they'd found a love story for the ages.